those who know me very well, I'm very, very passionate about the Adventure Guide program. Close to 5 years ago, when I was new to Adventure Guides, and it seemed like this was a great group, and it was all about fun stuff like vests and badges and campouts. When I went to my first campout, I stood at the fire like this one, and I listened to the nation's chief speak great words that literally in that moment changed my life. As he spoke, that chief answered a question that had bothered me since I was a little boy, and I've wondered about ever since. My question was simply this: what happened? You see, when I grew up, I marveled at our history and the men and the women that shaped our world. Normally in history books, they show us pictures of gray-haired old men like Washington and Einstein and Darwin, and you would think that they were old and wise when they accomplished great things. But for some reason, I discovered at an early age that really wasn't the case. Laura Ingalls Wilder, in Little House on the Prairie, was just 15 years old, but she was trusted with a one-room schoolhouse and had to teach several grades of boys and girls. George Washington was 17 when he was sent to survey the lands of Virginia for our government, and he became a general leading the Virginia military at age 23. Einstein was only 26 when he submitted his first papers in quantum theory. Charles Darwin signed on with the HMS Beagle at the tender age of 23 and began his journey to the Galapagos Islands. The commander of the Beagle wasn't sure if Darwin was mature enough to handle what would become a 5-year voyage. After all, the commander was 26, the ripe old age. Meriwether Lewis was just 25 years old when he was promoted to become the private secretary and assistant to the President of the United States. He was then chosen to lead the famous Lewis and Clark expedition across the country. His guide and interpreter was a Shoshone woman named Sacagawea, who was only 15 years old. She became the first woman to have an equal vote alongside of officers and soldiers on a U.S. military venture. As a boy, I wondered when things like wisdom and bravery and perseverance to do great things would come to me. Something just seemed to be missing in my life. Something was different from the days of our ancestors. I certainly didn't feel like I was prepared to take on any of these challenges that have been thrust upon even younger men and women in years gone by. And I didn't really know any other kid was much more capable than me. As I went to school and to college, I was hoping that somehow I would be changed. I learned things, but I did not become wise. As a child, I envisioned a special milestone that was always just around a corner, one that would forever change me. I began to think of this event as a coming-of-age birthday party, that I would be then asked by the grown-ups to join an Indian hunting party. And I hoped this group of adults would somehow take me under their wing and teach me the things that school did not, and they would teach me to be wise. Finally, I accepted that this was never going to happen. There would be no one watershed moment, and I would have to change myself. I began keeping lists of all that I needed to remember to tell my child that someday, if I were lucky enough to be blessed with a daughter or a son, there was things I wanted to remember to tell her. It was kind of it became an obsession. I was constantly saying to myself, you need to remember to tell them this. Now don't forget, they're going to need to know about that. I didn't want my child to ever feel the emptiness that I had felt. Someday I wanted them to be wise. Then I came to my first Adventure Guides campout, and I heard a chief speak words right out of the Adventure Guides manual, words that I haven't heard anybody else speak since. And it went something like this. The Y Adventure Guides program was originally called Indian Guides, and it was initiated in 1926 by Harold Keltner, the director of YMCA in St. Louis. Keltner was inspired while on a hunting trip in Canada with his guide and friend Joe Friday, who was an Ojibway Indian. As they sat around a campfire one evening, Joe Friday said to him, "The Indian father raises his son. He teaches him how to hunt, and to track and to fish, and to walk softly and silently in the forest, and to know the meaning and the purpose of life and all that he must know, while the white man allows his mother to raise his son." That was it. That one statement was the answer to a question that had bothered me for so long. And that's what was different from the days of our history books. My dad had worked all the time, and we did spend a lot of time together. But I don't think he ever thought of himself as the person who was supposed to teach me how to hunt, to track, and to fish. In other words, how to make a living. Or to walk softly and silently through the forest and know the meaning of life and the purpose of life and all the things that I must know. In other words, to be wise. In short, my father delegated. Raising his son had somehow become primarily the job of his wife in the classroom. Somehow he had become a distant second or third to my education. And finally, he was not there at all. Now, as we stand here with our daughters here tonight, we understand that Adventure Guides is not just about sons and white men anymore. It's also not about vests and badges and campouts. Adventure Guides was developed as a deliberate way to support the father's vital role as teacher, counselor, and friend to his son or daughter. In short, it is our job to teach our children to be wise. It is not a job to be delegated. It is our job. For all of history, our ancestors, until just a few hundred years ago, for them schools were rare, and most education was done at home. In the 1800s, the average mother had 7 children in the United States. Half of those children survived to adulthood. And her life expectancy was only 39. Historically, it's been the mother's role to keep her children safe, fed, and frankly, just alive. With 7 children, there was little time for much else. Fathers and mothers worked together as a team whose skills balanced each other out. While the mother said, "Be careful," the father said, "You can do it. Climb a little higher." When a child came of age, the responsibility of guiding the child into adulthood was largely the father's. The mother didn't have time. Sometimes it was only boys that walked with their father and received these teachings. But some fathers, like Gustav the Great of Sweden, in the 1600s, he realized the greatness that was inside all children. When the king's astrologers predicted without a doubt that the king's pregnant wife would produce a boy child, the kingdom was prepared to welcome a new prince who would become the king. When a girl was born, the king was very happy, stating, "She'll be clever. She has made fools of us all," and declared that his daughter Christina would be king, not queen, but king of Sweden. The king ordered Christina to receive the education of a prince. She learned Swedish, and German, Dutch, and Danish, and French, and Italian by the time she was 14. King Gustav, who was the commanding general of the army, had Christina trained at his side. She learned military tactics and politics and was said to be able to outride any men in the military on her horse. She eventually reviewed her soldiers while wearing full armor and earned the full confidence of her army and statesmen alike. Christina was widely regarded as brilliant and took the throne at age 18 as the girl king. Throughout our history, it has been our role to teach our children how to hunt and to track and to fish and to walk softly and silently through the forest and to know the meaning and purpose of life. Mothers have tended to focus on child management. In the past, fathers were in charge of child development. Fathers had a vital role, and we were born to it. We weren't just a substitute parent who was primarily the keeper of the paycheck and also did babysitting once in a while. We were in charge of development. We were all teachers. So here we are, as we stand at this campfire, we have an opportunity to have something very special. This is something very special, this is very rare. Not only do we have a weekend to strengthen our bond with our children, but we also have an opportunity to strengthen the bond with other like-minded fathers in our tribe, to encourage them to perhaps help us teach our children. We have this wonderful moment to take a step back in time when the earth and the forest provided for all of our needs, and we as fathers strive to teach our children how to walk softly and silently in the forest and know the meaning and purpose of life. There are 50,000 Adventure Guides aged children in our city and in the surrounding area that make up the Sour Nation, but there's only about 500 dads and their sons and daughters that are part of our Adventure Guide program. That's less than 1/10%. Yes, to be part of this program is very rare, it's very precious. And I'm honored and privileged to be here tonight as I have been at every camp out. For a new dad to a tribe, it can be a bit uncomfortable to go hang out with a bunch of strangers in the woods. But I'm so proud of you new fathers who took that chance for your daughter's sake. I've heard of other chiefs speak at this fire and say, there's nothing else like this when they talk about the Adventure Guides program. I'm a little bit more cynical. I say that in many ways, this is all we have left of those hunting parties of the past. So, love your children, teach them well, and make them wise. How?